Kwa majina mimi ni Sammy Owino Lali, wengi wenyu wananijua kama Sammy Owino Kempes. Nitagombea kiti cha rais wa Football Kenya Federation katika uchaguzi inayokuja. Nia yangu ya kujenga hii video ni ya kwanza kujitambulisha, sababu pengine kuna watu ambao hawanijui ama wananijua kijuju. Alafu ya pili ni kuzungumza kuhusu mpango wangu, Mungu akinijalia ama nikiweza kupata nafasi ya kuchaguliwa kuwa rais wa Football Kenya Federation. Kwa hivyo episode hii ni ya kwanza, and for me I just want to introduce myself so that you all know who I am. So I was actually born at Pumwani Hospital. It's a neighboring hospital to Ziwani Estate where I grew up. I went to St. Bridget Primary School, and then in my last year, ended up going to Riverbank Primary School, which was in Ngara. I did my CP there, and then graduated, and then went to Nairobi Technical High School for my secondary school education. You know, the education system was different. I know for a lot of the young generation here, younger generation, you're not familiar with A levels or O levels, but at the time there were 4 years of secondary school education, and there was another 2 years before you went to the university. But anyway, I did my O levels and my A levels. I never had the opportunity to go to the university because there was only one university in the country at the time, the University of Nairobi, and you had to be like in the top echelon of graduating students. It was extremely difficult to get there, so I didn't get there, and it was even harder if you're doing engineering, which is what I wanted to do, and so I wasn't able to get in. And then the opportunity came along after that. I was very fortunate that somebody saw me play soccer, and I figured I could be helpful to a university in United States, and at the same time get my education. So they offered me a scholarship, and that's how I ended up going to the United States. I played for Alabama University, did my electrical engineering education, and graduated as an electrical engineer. And then from there, I ended up doing my master's at the University of Huntsville in Alabama. And really, in a nutshell, that's kind of my story, away from football per se. But my football story is kind of interesting. It's pretty kind of interesting in a sense that, growing up in Ziwani, we really did not have a choice. You either played football, played boxing, or did both. And so in my case, I did both. So I played football, which was my passion, but then I did boxing as well. But I did that for a short period of time. I stuck with football because for me, that was really what I wanted to do. Looking back, obviously, with boxing, even when you win, you get still beat up. Sometimes you win and you get a couple of punches in the head. And so I'm kind of glad that I ended up with football and not boxing. But anyway, football was my passion. We grew up in the streets. We played in the streets, and that's what we did. Once in a while, we played teams from other estates, but for the most part, we just played each other in the streets. And sometimes we had teams in different parts of the estate that played against each other. But generally, that's how we played. I think, when I look back at it, the freedom to play the way you want allows you to be a very creative player. So if you look at players that come from estates, they're very creative because of that freedom that they get, and just doing what they want, trying things, and that's how they become creative. Anyway, when I was around at 12, 13 years old, I was actually invited to play for a program called Olympic Youth Center, which was started by a coach by the name of Bernhard Gott from Germany. And the genesis of the program was a collaboration between the Kenya government and the Germany government. And the idea was, I think it was a cultural exchange program. And it was an excellent academy. And, that was the first time that I had the opportunity to experience what a true academy looked like. And they started centers not just in Nairobi, but in various cities around the country. And the true measure of the success of the academy was that years later, when those same players came to the age where they were playing for the national team, a lot of them ended up playing for the national team. And more importantly, the national team performed really well. And so I was one of those players. And for example, people like Mulamba was another one. But there were a lot of good players that came from the Wilberforce Mulamba. A lot of good players that came from there. And then, at the age of 17, I was recruited by Luo Union, and they came to Meme, and there were a lot of players that were being recruited that ended up playing for Luo Union from Umeme. Umeme and Luo Union had good relationship. Charles Cheng was one of them, and they inspired us or encouraged us when they were picked, and we saw them growing up in Ziwani and then going to play for other teams, and so it encouraged us to be able to know that was possible. But anyway, Luo Union recruited me and ended up signing me. So at the time, they had just won the Premier League and were representatives of Kenya in the Eastern Central Club Championship in Kampala. So I ended up playing there. At the time, I think I was the youngest player at 17 years old in the tournament. So I played in that tournament, and after the tournament, Gor Mahia actually liked me and wanted me to play for them. Unfortunately, I had signed up with Luo Union, but what happened was Gor Mahia got me on a technicality because Luo Union had not followed the procedures for signing a player. They, I think, wanted to avoid paying the full transfer fee to Meme. So what they did was they kind of avoided the normal transfer process. So Gor Mahia used that loophole and were able to get me to play for them. So I ended up playing for Gor Mahia. At the age of 18, I got invited to play for the national team by Jonathan Neva, the late Jonathan Neva. And the reason being that the national team was supposed to go play in a tournament in South Korea. And amongst the countries that were going to play there was Brazil, Germany was another one, South Korea. So this was supposed to be a very good tournament. And unfortunately, the late Jomo Kenyatta passed away during that time, and the trip was cancelled. So we ended up not going for the trip, and then I focused on my A level because it coincided with the time that I was doing my A level. So I took myself out of the national team, and for a period of time that I was doing my A levels, which was 2 years, and then focused on Gor Mahia and just my A levels. But then after I was done with my A levels, I was called back to the national team, so I ended up playing for both. But the national team and Gor Mahia actually did very well around the time that I was playing. Gor Mahia, for example, won Eastern Central Club Championship back-to-back. We won in Kenya, and then we went and won in Malawi. And then also they won the league, obviously. And then we played, in the finals of African Cup Winners' Cup. Played against, in the finals against Canon Sportif, very good team at the time of Cameroon. And the bulk of the players of the Cameroon Sportif team ended up playing for Cameroon in the World Cup that followed, and did extremely well. And a lot of those players ended up being recruited to play professionally for teams in Spain and in Italy. Prior to that, there were few players, African players, maybe two, that at the time were playing in Europe. But when this group of players from Cameroon, played in the World Cup and were recruited in bulk, that's when the floodgates opened up and people begin to realize that there were good players from Africa that could play in Europe. So they paved the way for a lot of African players that are currently playing there. And so after that, I got the opportunity to come and do my studies, and at the same time play football in the United States. For me, it was an opportunity I could not pass because my future was always something in the back that was in the back of my mind, because I always knew that football was never going to last forever. And so my thinking was that I always had to make sure that I'm prepared for life after football. So this was kind of an opportunity that I saw that could help me in that way. So I took the opportunity, went there. It was myself and my teammate at the time, National Lule. We both went, got to go and do my electrical engineering degree, which really was a big bonus because it's really what I wanted to do, and I had the opportunity to do that. So I graduated in electrical engineering, and then I went to do my master's at the University of Huntsville in Alabama. And then, there's a lot that happened after that I'm not going to talk about in this episode. So I hope you're going to join me. I hope you now know a little bit more about me than you knew before. And you're going to join me in the next episode as we go through this journey so that you can understand why I'm running and what makes me qualified for this position. Until then, bye.